We start off with the latest coming in from the United States, where President Joe Biden has called gun violence in the country an epidemic and wants stricter gun laws. The new U.S. administration has now unveiled initial actions and measures to address the increasing gun violence in America. The Biden government has come up with 6 initial actions to curb gun violence. Biden has announced the moves designed to revamp the U.S. federal gun policy. As gun control activists rejoice, gun owners see their right to self-defense at risk. But Joe Biden says that his job is to protect the American people.
We've got a long way to go. It seems like we always have a long way to go. But also today we're taking steps to confront not just the gun crisis, but what is actually a public health crisis. Nothing I'm about to recommend in any way impinges on the Second Amendment. They're phony arguments suggesting that these are Second Amendment rights at stake from what we're talking about. But no amendment to the Constitution is absolute. You can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater. We call it freedom of speech. From the very beginning, you couldn't own any weapon you wanted to own. From the very beginning the Second Amendment existed, certain people weren't allowed to have weapons. So the idea is just bizarre to suggest that some of the things we're recommending are contrary to the Constitution. Gun violence in this country is an epidemic.
The recent high-profile mass shootings in Boulder taking the lives of 10 individuals and Atlanta, where 8 people were killed, underscored the relentlessness of this epidemic. The Biden government has come up with 6 initial actions to curb gun violence. He has announced the 6 initial moves designed to revamp the U.S. federal gun policy. Take a listen into what he said.
Every day in this country, 316 people are shot every single day. 106 of them die every day. Our flag was still flying at half-staff for the victims of the horrific murder of 8 primarily Asian American people in Georgia, when 10 more lives were taken in a mass murder in Colorado. You probably didn't hear it, but between those 2 incidents, less than 1 week apart, there were more than 850 additional shootings. 850 that took the lives of more than 250 people and left 500 injured. This is an epidemic, for God's sake, and it has to stop.
In fact, cities across the United States are in the midst of a historic spike in homicides, violence that disproportionately impacts Black and brown Americans. The U.S. president has said that he is committed to taking action to reduce all forms of gun violence. Biden has announced several steps to curb this epidemic of gun violence. Within 30 days, the U.S. will issue a proposed rule to help stop the proliferation of ghost guns. Justice Department will also publish model red flag legislation for states. Red flag laws essentially allow family members or law enforcement agencies to petition for a court order temporarily barring people in crisis from accessing firearms if they present danger to themselves or others. President Biden has also nominated David Chipman, a former special agent in the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives. The department is also known as ATF. Chipman is the first permanent director of the agency in more than 6 years. Given the fraught nature of gun politics, only one ATF director has been confirmed by the U.S. Senate in the last 15 years, leaving the agency mostly run by a string of acting bosses. Joining us on the broadcast this minute is our correspondent Susan Tehrani from New York. 316 people in the United States shot every day. 106 of them die. The president there talking about how this is an epidemic that the country is dealing with. Explain to us the significance of the measures that have been announced.
Well, first of all, this is an executive action on the part of Joe Biden and not an executive order, which means it's not a binding law. This can go to court, and as you can see from the language of his executive action, a lot of these are proposals. Because Joe Biden knows that this is not legislation, and there is no way that these measures will ever get past a Congress or a Senate, because a lot of them will have arguments of Second Amendment issues, despite the fact that he said none of them violate the Second Amendment. He's going to be challenged on that, that's for sure. We'll have to see how he will be challenged on that. There is already concern on whether or not this is an overreach or not, and I think that's why he sort of put this into an executive action. He knew if he was going to take it to Congress, it was going to face resistance because of these measures, but nonetheless, because of the recent shootings that has been going on in the United States, the president was under pressure to take some sort of action against gun violence. And this is very normal when an incoming Democratic president comes to office, as did President Obama. They do make gun reform a priority, and this is what he mentioned during his campaign trail. However, the coronavirus and this infrastructure plan took center stage until these unfortunate recent shootings, which then brought gun reform back to the forefront. But I think the devil's in the detail. We'll have to see how many of these measures will really come into law. And one more point about these red laws that you mentioned. A lot of them are already in place, so he sort of wants to expand those. These red flag laws, that's something perhaps Republicans and Democrats can both work with. It was going to get passed during the Trump administration. The President Trump was backing it during his administration, however, pulled back last minute. So he may garner some support in that regard.
All right, Susan Tehrani, thanks very much for those updates. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.